art can mean different things to different people. For me, it's all about the joy of creating. So if you draw, paint, write, dance, sing, craft, play air guitar, or even sculpt using nothing but mashed potatoes, consider yourself an artist and join the conversation. For the next half hour, meet the artist, learn about their inspiration, and enjoy the beauty of creativity. Welcome to Art Talk with John Cole Artist. Well, all right. Good evening, everyone. It's John Cole Artist on Facebook and YouTube Live. First of all, I want to say thank everybody for tuning in. And if you're going to be watching the replay later at your convenience, I thank you too. So tonight, I have a very special guest. It's my good friend, Michelle Sullivan. She is a doodleist and watercolorist. Good evening, Michelle. How are you?
Good evening, John. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, before I forget, like I did last episode, in case there's any spirits, because you never know when we're going to be visited.
Yes.
So we know it works. So I'll put it over here. And if it goes off, we might have to stop the show just to see who's here.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about what exactly is a doodleist? I don't really know if a lot of people know what that is. Can you enlighten us?
Well, I would say a doodleist is a person who likes to doodle. You don't necessarily have to be a trained artist or even think that your drawings have to be recognizable. I would say that probably as children, we were all doodleists at one time, right?
Right.
Thinking about when you're in kindergarten and you're standing in front of the easel and there's four colors of paint: red, blue, yellow, green. And our goal was to just have fun, right?
Right.
So when I think about doodling, for me, it's about having fun and giving myself permission to play. So.
Right. And you didn't start that. I mean, you started this relatively recently, right? I mean, I'm sure you were always a doodleist, because I know a lot of us are, like you were saying, but
I think maybe when I was in middle school, I probably doodled, but I do remember when I was a child, I loved to make books, and I would take paper and fold it in half and staple a few pages together and write a story. I remember doing that as a child, but it's been a very long time since I've done anything like this.
Right. And Christine's on. Hi, Christine. She says hello. So
yeah. So I think what happened with me, John, is when I was working with Allison Roberts, and she was teaching us about how to connect with our inner child. I think that was the beginning for me to just give myself permission to play. So I was one of those people that grew up and just was so busy with the adult things of life that I didn't allow myself to play. I thought that was something that needed to be packed away. But what I'm finding with doodling is it brings me so much joy and it makes me so happy. And I'm actually able to express myself through the doodles that I'm just so glad that I gave myself the permission to say yes and give it a try.
Yeah, and I think you really bring up a good point already, which is awesome, because I think this next 30 minutes is going to fly by. I can tell that already. When you talk about your inner child, because I know that that's something that you've been working with for quite some time, and I know I have as well. And that's probably something for those that are watching that might not be too familiar with that idea of an inner child.
Yeah.
The way I look at it, and this is kind of the way that I try to understand it myself, because I'm older. I'm 56, 57. I was born at 65, however old I am, right?
We're the same age, buddy.
There we go. And it's sometimes that's kind of a hard concept to grasp, right? Because I was a kid once, but I'm not anymore.
Right.
But for me, the fact is I am that same person. Yeah. And the only difference between little John and big John is time. And as we know, and I wrote this on a sticky pad, time is imaginary. It really doesn't exist, right? So from that perspective, when you talk about your inner child, you're really talking about yourself. And for me, it's just about forgetting, right? So does doodling then help you remember who you were?
Most definitely. I would say, so one of the things in the work that I've been doing, I am a life coach.
Hmm.
And so my clients that I work with, we do some of that connecting with the inner child, because a lot of what the trauma and things we've experienced in our life stems from when we were young. So just very quickly, in my particular situation, I was sexually abused at 4 years old. And so it forever did something to the DNA
Hmm.
of me. And so as I grew older, I wanted to forget about what happened to me. And I left that little Michelle back there.
Right.
And so when I learned that I could go back and rescue her and bring her with me into my current life, and it's all imaginary, it was a meditation
Hmm.
of going back and rescuing her. She is giddy with delight that we're doing this. She absolutely loves it and wants to do it all the time. She's thinking about doodles. Oh, that would make a fun doodle.
Hmm.
And so for me, it's just so fun to be able to connect with that inner child, that little Michelle. And she's looking at my work and she says, "Oh, that's so much fun. What happens if we paint the face purple? What if we put a mohawk on a porcupine?" You know?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she very much is, I'm listening to her instincts and her guiding when it comes to drawing.
Right. Yeah. And we talked a little bit before we got on about the fact that you're using watercolor, which, if there's any artists watching that have used watercolor, it's not exactly the easiest type of paint to work with. I've worked in watercolor, acrylic, oil, and watercolor can be a challenge. So has it been difficult for you with watercolor, or do you find that it's somehow freeing, or what?
That's such a great question, because I don't control the watercolor.
Hmm.
I don't control where the colors go. If there's
Right.
too much water on the paper and the colors blend together, that's okay with me, because and I am a fiber artist as well. So I spin yarn and I weave and I knit. I don't like going by the strict rules of
Hmm.
things. I'm more of an intuitive, interpretive, creative person. So
Right.
I don't follow the rules anyway. So letting, and I know you're like, oh, I let all of that go.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to bring
So,
up, if you don't mind, I'm going to bring up your Sedona doodle
yeah.
really quick. I want to show folks the Sedona doodle here, and maybe you can. I don't know why it's not coming. Oh, there we go. I'm going to bring it up. There we go. So maybe this is what. Can you talk a little bit about this really
Yeah.
quick? Because I think this is kind of what you're talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So this was, I mean, I have to let you guys know, I've really only been using watercolor since December.
Of
So
last year, 2022.
yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we were in Sedona, Arizona, and I brought my little pan of watercolor paints with me and a little booklet, and I showed it to you, John.
You did.
And
Yeah.
I was just so inspired by what I saw from the hotel, from my room. And so I drew it to the best of my ability. And then I just started putting watercolor paint on the paper. And I didn't have a specific outcome as far as how I wanted it to look. I just did it.
Right.
And I looked at the mountains and the red rocks and the different colors. And if you remember, there was snow on the mountains and all of that. And I was just so inspired by what I saw out there. And I just gave myself permission, and I think it's a beautiful picture.
It is, and having been with you in Sedona, I think one of one of the things I said to you when you showed me this kit that you brought, and when you told me that you were going to doodle and use the watercolor, what I said was, when you do these types of things that you create with your own hand based on your own interpretation, it's actually better than a photograph in a way, because with a photograph, I think you're typically behind a viewfinder. I mean, even on your phone, when I pick up my phone to take a picture, I'm doing this. So I'm really not looking at the thing. I'm looking at an image of the thing. I snap the picture and then I move on. I get home, right? I upload my pictures. Oh yeah, I remember that. Well, you really don't, because you didn't really look at it. You looked at your phone. When you do it by hand like this, in a way you're interacting with what you're seeing, right? And then you're making that interpretation. Mm-hmm. So this to me is that memory encapsulated in ink and watercolor, and it's gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. There's those black things are ravens, and we saw a lot of ravens. I actually one day saw 5 right outside of my window, and it was a very emotional, impactful time for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm so grateful that I just let myself do it, because I mean, things are not to scale. I don't know anything about scale or I don't even know the terms. I'm just taking my little pen and my little book and drawing in it and then adding color to it. And right. To be honest with you, that's so much more freeing to me than having to follow rules.
Right.
Because it's just, that's not what I want to do. I just want to be able to express myself. And so that gives me the freedom to play. Now, that might not be for everyone, and that's totally fine. But for me, mm-hmm. It makes me so happy. It's like Michelle can use every color, and if you muddy it up, it's okay.
Yeah. And I think that what you end up with, again, I think becomes more personal, right? Because it is that reflection of you.
Yeah.
And I think that for those folks that are watching, if you're afraid, because a lot of times when it comes to art specifically, art can be a very intimidating word, because I think a lot of folks interpret art to be, gallery work or things like that. And they are, right?
Yeah.
But art is also a very personal experience. It can be, in a way, a very spiritual experience.
Yes.
I think I might have used that word with Carrie when I was speaking with her 2 weeks ago. When you're involved with doing a painting, when you're involved with doing a doodle, there's something about your mind shifts. I think, you get into that state of flow, mm-hmm. where I know for me, when I'm painting or I'm drawing or doing something like that, time does cease to exist for me, because it just becomes all about me. I become one with the painting. I know that sounds
I totally understand.
Yeah, very philosophical and very metaphysical, but I think that's the case. And for those that are afraid to start, you really don't need to be, because doodling is something that I think, like you were saying, if you started in middle school, I'll admit, probably started a little earlier than that. I never liked school, so I did tend to either skip it to watch television or, draw pictures or something. But anybody can doodle.
Absolutely. Anybody can doodle. And I'll be honest with you, I go to Pinterest and I look at posts of doodles on Pinterest, and I started a whole Pinterest board on doodles. Oh, okay. And I'll look at other people's doodles and then try to copy it.
Right. And yeah. I mean, if anything, for inspiration, and that's a really great point too, when it comes to doing any kind of art, even if it's oil, a charcoal drawing, it definitely helps that if you have a vision in your mind to draw a bear or a fish, to know what a bear or a fish looks like.
Yeah.
Alternatively, if you're going for the fantastic, you don't need that, right? You can just make your fish have 4 legs or whatever. You could do that if you want.
Yeah.
Right?
And it could be orange and purple and
Yeah, and you're right. Pinterest is great. I know when I was in Sedona, my wife and I, we had stopped at a gallery, and just walking around and seeing what other people were doing, not to reproduce, right? Because we never want to reproduce, but we want to get inspired. And that's the thing, even if it's just color. And what I brought back with me was this rich use of color. So I started doing some things that really focused on color. So
Yeah.
yeah, having Pinterest or something like that's a great option for
Yeah.
ideas.
Well, I know that on Pinterest you can find tutorials for children how
Mhm.
to draw animals.
Okay.
So I will share with your audience. I know you already know, but I am writing a book this year. It doesn't have a title yet, but it's very similar to the hero's journey. And my rabbit, Connie, that I made last year, I sewed a rabbit, a stuffed rabbit. She actually became my friend when I was going through the healing of the childhood sexual abuse. I decided to write a story about Connie
Mm.
going on a hero's journey, and it's about her healing. And so that's where all these little animal doodles have been coming in, John. The
Right.
bear, the raccoon, the owl, the rabbit. I'm practicing every day. I'm just drawing and practicing until my little characters come to life. So I think the Connie, the rabbit, that's my start with her. Her little raccoon friend that she meets on the way, which the chipmunk, she's smaller than the rabbit. And it's a very interesting narrative with the little chipmunk because the chipmunk tells Connie, "Oh, I could never do what you do."
Mm.
And so
Right.
there's always going to be someone that's going to say, "Oh, wow, I could never do what you do." And really it's about just setting out on the journey. But
Right.
one of the characters that they meet is this bear, and his name is going to be El Oso, and El Oso is bear in Spanish. But I love that name so much, El
Right.
Oso. Um, so yeah, I mean, starting on this journey of healing and connecting with my inner child has inspired me to play and doodle, but now I want to write a book and illustrate it, that it could be an encouragement to anyone, whether it's a child or all the way up to an adult, about the courage to set out on a journey to heal.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing. I mean, I think yeah, I mean first of all, doing all of that and you just started doing this in December, right?
Yeah.
And we're only in February. I mean, we're here in New England, we're not even done with snow because it snowed this morning, right? Yeah. I thought we were all done, so I had to put my snow brush away and everything, and next thing you know, it's all snowing again.
Yeah.
Um, but this just shows how that I think Allison Roberts, who is both of our coach, she uses that term inspired action, and that's what this sounds like. There's the spark of inspiration that sounds like it probably was germinating for a while, showed up last year with this rabbit that really came into its own in December when you discovered this doodling capability, and now it's snowballing into what it will. I was going to say potentially it will be really a life-changing book for people. That's
Yeah.
amazing. It really
Yeah.
is.
And the interesting thing about it, John, is I'm doing this book for me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
That's
if
the
it,
best part. Yeah.
and it's for me, there's so many levels of growth here. I do believe that it is going to be published, that I'm going to be able to get into the hands of some people that will encourage them and change their life.
Right.
And but I have to do it for me first
Oh
and
yeah.
not think about who it's going to impact. Right now it's about the impact that it has on my life.
Right. And Anna Davis says hello.
Hi, Anna.
Thanks for joining us tonight, Anna. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So now, did you want to show our folks your doodling process? Because I think we're set up for that.
Yeah, sure. We can do that.
Okay.
So if this was something that you think that you might want to try, let me see.
Oops, let me figure out what we're looking at here.
Okay,
Let me show this first. What I'm going to
there
do is
we
I'm going to bring
go.
this up on the screen
Yeah.
so that that's what we see. So
All right. So this is new for both John and I.
yeah, it's always good to try new things. I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
So the most important thing is that you need a Sharpie pen that is waterproof, because this is what, and you can also get a pencil that's waterproof as well. So I'm just going to start. I have a couple of doodles that I think are me. So this is one. So I'm just using the Sharpie pencil. Um, I'm just drawing some hair on my head, and because I like to wear my hair in a curly bun, I do that.
Right.
Um, Simple, just some little eyes and a mouth. Now, I mean, you might look at that and go, well, that's pretty basic. But you know what? This is just Michelle. I put a heart here, and I love to draw a little heart where my hand's on my heart, you know?
Right.
And I might just say, I love myself. Just like that, you know? Um, it's a very simple drawing. Even if you were just drawing a stick figure, it's just, I mean, we've all done this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you could make it however you want. I'm going to do a John Cole here.
Well, thank you. I feel honored to be a doodle.
Yeah. So that would be my John, and maybe I'll put some shoes on you. Oh, and you need a hat because you definitely were rocking the hat when we were in Arizona. So, I mean, it's like it's really not that hard, you just start. Now, this is another doodle of me that I've been playing around with. Um, and this is the thing about doodling, you get to just you just practice. So this one, Michelle's going to be in contemplation.
Hmm.
So and again, I'm going to put my hands over my heart, and I'm sitting here and I'm just meditating. That's pretty much it.
That's
So what I would do, when I first started, I was using watercolor pencils. So I'm going to, and this is, watercolor pencils are really great if you're just not, if you don't want to invest in a pan of watercolors, but they're really not that expensive. So with the watercolor pencils, I would just color it in however I want. I'm going to give myself blue pants here. And then there's something really, really fun that happens after this, because these are watercolor pencils. They're not um, just pencils. So I will use brushes. Now these brushes you can fill with water, but I choose to not fill them with water, and I have a little cup of water right here next to me, and I'm just going to start. And because I'm using the
look at that.
Sharpie,
Yeah, look at that.
yeah, see it just, and it's a watercolor. It's a, it doesn't, the lines don't go away because of this waterproof Sharpie. And I'm going to go in, I'm going to paint the heart.
And you're not worried about the lines or anything. You're
No,
just doing your thing on there. I love that.
exactly. So, with, and the thing is, with watercolor, you play with it. You can play with it if you're not trying to control it, right?
Right.
So you see, I've done that. And now I'm going to do my pants. And I'm going to show you something that, the more water you have on the paper, the paint moves. At least that's been my experience.
Right.
So I'm going to show you sometimes where, for me, it gets a little bit tricky is doing skin color. So this, and you see how it's already, see how I pulled some of that color up right there from the face.
Yes.
I'm just going to let it be what it is.
Right. Look at that.
Yeah. And to me, there's something really amazing that happens when you put paint on the paper,
I was going to say it really brings it to life. It's almost like a magic. It's
Yeah,
kind of special, isn't it?
it is. It's so much fun. And I know there have been times that I've done doodles and I've thought, oh, I don't like that at all. And then when I put the paint on it,
Right.
I love it. And, and then I might, you know, um, just do a little bit of color around and then get a wider brush
Right.
and just start adding some color around it. Again, I'm just playing. I'm just having fun, giving myself permission. And you see how it's bleeding there?
Yeah.
I could get a paper towel and clean that up if I want, or I could
Or
just,
just leave it.
yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. I hate to use that word because I think it's overused, but that's really cool. And I think there's something really special. So what do you tell people that are starting out? Let's say that they watch this show tonight or tomorrow or whenever, and they're like, you know what, I'm going to go out and buy a Sharpie, go out and buy a set of watercolors. And they start to do it, and right away they get frustrated, right? Maybe it's not looking like what they want, or they're trying to draw a bear and it looks like a jackrabbit or something. I mean, what would you tell people?
I would say if you've never drawn before, and I would say be kind to yourself and just allow yourself to develop the skills.
Right.
You have been an artist for quite some time. And so you have a very refined way of creating your art. Even your dot art is incredible that you do with animal portraits. I've only been at this for a few months, so I can't expect to be at a level with someone that's been at it for a long time. But I don't know that I want to either. I want to do my thing.
Yep.
I want to have fun. And so
Yeah.
that's what I would just say to people. You're not going to be breaking the bank if you go and buy a pad of watercolor paper and even a small, inexpensive pan of watercolors, or get yourself some watercolor pencils. And you only need like maybe one brush, and give it a try.
Yeah.
This is a thing that's interesting. My husband is also an artist and he uses very expensive materials. The most difficult thing for him is getting started because he's afraid if I make a mistake, how expensive of a mistake is it going to be?
Right.
You're not going to lose anything here by just giving it a try.
No, not at all.
Right.
Not at all. And that's great advice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know I've got a picture of a face that she's purple that I wanted to show your audience real quick.
Yep.
So another thing that, yeah, there you go. So this is another thing that I've learned how to do. And it's a journal. It's a journal prompt, actually. And so I started by drawing my face and the hair. I put a crown on my head, you can see.
Mhm.
And then I started drawing lines in my hair. I started drawing lines everywhere. And then I drew flowers and pomegranates and leaves and all of those lines. And that is an exercise for me on things that I love about myself and also areas where I want to grow. So if you look at my face, I've got insightful, enough, worthy, encouraging, you know.
Mhm.
Um, if you look over here to the left, you see the word lonely. Sometimes I feel lonely, but I also feel loved. And so for me, I just filled up a whole page, this what is it, 9 by 12 page, and there's lines in it, and I can go back and fill it in. And I do this a lot since I've learned this technique. Um, and so it's a way for me to connect with my thoughts and my feelings, which I know you know all about that.
Yep, sure do.
But it's such a creative way to do it. And I think when you were talking about getting lost in a project,
Mhm.
when I did this one, I got lost in it.
Yeah.
It was just, I was enjoying it so much.
Yep.
So,
So that's exactly what art, any type of art, should mean to the artist
mhm,
is that sense of self. I mean, the picture that you painted there, clearly self-identity, using words, using the colors, using, your God-given talents to do that.
yeah,
Whether this or sculpture of the thinker, right? It's the same thing, and that's why I hope that people that are listening to this that haven't tried this type of art, or who have never tried art, or who even have been doing art for a while, even myself, I've never tried doodling. I've never tried, using watercolor on a doodle. Watercolor to me has always been a very challenging art form, primarily for the reason you suggested earlier, which is I tend to be a little too detail oriented.
yeah,
Too detail oriented.
yeah,
So for me, this would be a really great thing to try. And I will promise you on this recording that will be on the internet forever,
yeah.
I will give it a go.
So, one of the things that could be really helpful is to do a swatch,
Okay.
just a color swatch, a soothing swatch. And this is just different colors from my palette, and I just kind of like that little kid, in kindergarten, just doing their thing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Real quick, let me tell you why. Let me tell you a really quick story about why me and watercolor never got along.
Okay.
So way back when I was in high school, probably maybe 10th grade, 11th grade, whatever. I was in an art class, and we had to do a watercolor painting that was part of the assignment. So I thought, well, I'm going to do the Loch Ness Monster, because I was really into, and I still am
Right.
to some respect, I still am, to mythological creatures. So I painted this beautiful, like water scene with these beautiful trees. And I went to paint the Loch Ness Monster, and it looked like a thumb. It was like a traumatic experience. It never turned out to be what I wanted it to be. And I walked away from watercolor at that point. And it hadn't been only till recently that I picked it back up. And you're looking at probably a 35-year gap in between, right?
Yeah.
But this gives me hope. This gives me hope, Michelle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, John? The interesting thing about that is no one really knows what the Loch Ness Monster looks like anyway. Nessie
That's
could look like a thumb.
It could look like a thumb, but I really wish I had saved that painting. It was just
Yeah.
horrible. And
So
look at,
I think it's about letting go of the outcome.
yes.
And so I think there's different parts of it, of being creative, especially if you're working for wanting something specifically. Yes, I understand. I
Right.
mean, I have this beautiful koi watercolor painting that's in here in my room that you painted. And I mean, that's one thing, but you can take the same materials and do something else. These materials are for you to explore, for you to try. And whether if you want to have a more refined skill, you could. And if you don't, that's okay too.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because the
So
bottom
did you
line,
see Anna? She said, my inner children have got me doing art projects too.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about her the other day because I know one of the things that she's been experimenting with are those acrylic pour paintings.
Yeah, those
Um,
are so much fun because you can't
yeah.
control those either.
Yeah, I think matter of fact, I haven't yet, but I want to reach out to her and see if she'll be on the show. So Anna, if you are interested in being and talking to me for half an hour about acrylic pour and some of the other things you may or may not be doing, I welcome the opportunity to talk to you.
Awesome.
It'd be a lot of fun. So,
Yeah.
uh, boy, we already 35 minutes in, so I think we can go ahead and start to say our goodbyes for this evening because I'm going to try to keep them at 30 minutes so people
Okay.
don't get overwhelmed.
Mhm.
Anna said, sounds like fun.
Of course.
Perfect. How can people get a hold of you, Michelle?
Yeah. So I am a transformational life coach, and I work with people that have experienced grief and trauma in their life. So the best way for someone to reach me would be through my email, which is theclarityjourney@gmail.com. And I'm more than happy to talk to you about doodling and how you can tie it into life coaching.
Yeah.
It's very it can interact and go very seamlessly together. And I also have a website, which is theclarityjourney.com, which talks more about my services, about the areas where I coach. And so this is, to me, is just, it's an outlet for me, but I think that other people will want to learn how to do this. And so I'm already incorporating some of it with some of my clients that I work with right now,
Right.
and they're really enjoying it.
I would imagine they would.
Yeah.
So very good. Well, so again, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me tonight. And thank you for being on my show. This is only the second show I've ever done, and this is amazing having you here. Hopefully we'll get a chance to get together again and you come on and show us where you are with your book, right? As you're moving along with that. I certainly wish you the best of luck with what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I know people, when they watch this, are really going to walk away knowing more than they did when they started. And for that, I thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation, John.
You're welcome. All right. And that, folks, is it for this evening. And I certainly appreciate you spending some time with me. And for those folks watching it on the replay, thank you very much. And thank you so very much for joining me on the Art Talk podcast, where it's my goal to bring artists together to talk about their craft. If you'd like to join me for a conversation, please reach out via email at johncoleartist@gmail.com or by visiting my website at johnrobertcole.com. So until next time, keep crafting, painting, and inspiring others with your creativity. You make more of an impact than you know. See ya.